My mother has been counting down since Tuesday. Out loud, one number at a time. She'll be washing a dish or folding a towel, and quietly, almost to herself, she'll say a number. Then she goes back to whatever she was doing. The next one comes an hour later, always one lower than the last. When I first noticed, she was somewhere in the 400s. I asked her what she was counting. She looked at me, kind and a little puzzled, and said she wasn't counting anything. Then she folded the towel, set it down, and said, very softly, 411. I'd come to stay with her after my father passed. Just for a while, I told myself, until the house stopped feeling so big around her. It's an old house, the one I grew up in, full of long hallways and rooms nobody uses anymore. My sister lives across the country, so it was the two of us, my mother, me, and a number that kept getting smaller. I told myself it was grief, or her age. People who live alone talk to themselves. But the next morning, I texted my sister to ask if Mom had ever done this before. While I was typing, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother, from the kitchen, 20 feet away. It was a single number, 398. I hadn't asked her anything. She'd just sent it. That afternoon, I called my sister and asked, carefully, if Dad had ever done anything like this. Counted. To himself. She went quiet for a long time. Then she said yes. In his last week, they'd all thought it was the medication, the morphine, the way it scrambles people at the end. Nobody wrote down the numbers. Nobody thought to. Why? And then she asked me, in a small voice, what number Mom was on. I told her. She hung up and she didn't call back. I started writing the numbers down with the times, and I saw it wasn't random and it wasn't steady either. Some hours she dropped 1. Some hours she dropped 12. The count was speeding up. And I noticed something else. Every time the number fell, she forgot something. At 300, she called me by my father's name. At 270, she asked when I was going home, and I had to tell her I lived here now, that I'd lived here for a month. At 200, she looked at the photographs on the mantel, the ones of me as a boy, and asked who the little kid was. That was when I understood what she was counting. She wasn't counting down to something. She was counting down me. Every number was one less thing she remembered about her own son. And when she reached 0, there would be nothing of me left in her at all. I tried to stop it. I sat her down. I held both her hands. I said my name over and over and made her say it back. She did, patiently, the way you humor someone. And the second she finished, calm as ever, she said the next number. 1 lower. It hadn't helped. It had cost her nothing to play along, and it had taken something anyway. That night I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I heard her voice through the wall, soft and even. I went into the hall. Her bedroom door was open, and the room was dark, and she was asleep. I could hear her breathing, slow and deep, but the counting kept going. I followed it. It was coming from the kitchen. The smart speaker on the counter was lit up, the way it does when it's speaking, and in my mother's voice, calm and warm, it was counting. 61, 60, 59. I never set it up to do that. It doesn't have her voice. I pulled the plug out of the wall, and the light died, and the room went quiet. And then, from the living room, the television turned itself on, to a black screen, and in her voice it said, 58. From down the hall, the old baby monitor we'd never thrown out crackled and said, 57. Then my own phone, in my hand, lit up with no call, no app, nothing, and said 56. And then it said my name, the way she used to say it when I was small, and went dark. After that, the numbers fell fast. By morning, she was in the 30s. She didn't know my face anymore. She was polite to me, the careful politeness you give a stranger in your home. She asked me, twice, if I was the man who had come to fix the heater. At dinner, she sat 2 places, one for herself and one across from her. And when I sat down in it, she looked startled. And then she smiled and said she'd been saving that seat for her son. I said I was her son. She patted my hand and said, "Oh, I had a son, you know." Lovely boy. And she said a number. I tried to make her remember. I showed her the photos, the old report cards, a drawing I made for her when I was 6 that she'd kept for 40 years. She looked at each one kindly, set it down, and said a number. 19, 11, 7, each one lower. Each one a little more of me gone out of the only person who had known me my whole life. This evening she reached the end. I was sitting across from her at the kitchen table, the way we'd sat 1,000 times before. She looked at me with a calm, pleasant, empty face, and she said, 1. Then she smiled, the warm smile she'd had my whole life, and she said, 0. And she asked me, gently, the way you'd be polite to a guest, I'm sorry, who are you? And she meant it. I opened my mouth to tell her, to say my name, my own name, the name she gave me, and for one long, cold second, standing in the kitchen I grew up in front of the woman who raised me, I could not remember it either. From the other room, very softly, in her voice, the counting started again. But this time it was going up.